The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by BigStar.com, with thousands of videos and DVDs for the whole family.
Hi, and welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stewart Cheifet. There's really only one mega celebrity in the computer industry, and that is Bill Gates. He's one of the best-known people in the world. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world, and he knows a lot about software in the computer business. He's also a bit of an enigma. It's hard to get a handle on what kind of guy he is. He seems a geek in some ways, a ferocious competitor in other ways. We recently had the unique opportunity to tape an exclusive interview with Gates. He was unusually relaxed and provided more insight than usual into how he thinks. Obviously, one thing Gates has been thinking about a lot these days is the Justice Department's antitrust suit against Microsoft. What is ironic about the charges of invincible monopoly against Microsoft is that Bill Gates seems to really believe that his company, far from being immune from competition, is very vulnerable to it.
Beyond believing in software, if there's a second fundamental part of the Microsoft culture, it's to say to ourselves, is this the day that we're being eclipsed? I mean, we lived through IBM being eclipsed. We lived through Wang being eclipsed. I grew up using digital computers. I worshiped digital. I thought, oh wow, someday I'm going to meet Ken Olsen. But by the time I met him, he wasn't really Ken Olsen anymore. We are in the customer feedback loop. We're seeing our shortcomings all the time. The support call that takes 2 hours, the opaqueness of our interface. We are very good at giving ourselves a hard time about the things that we're going to have to fix to be able to stay around and play a role.
During a speech prior to that interview, Gates talked about the risk of failure for Microsoft and the steps he takes to make sure the company doesn't fail.
About a decade ago, people would always send me mail saying, we won a certain account. And I'd think, well, okay, they sent me one piece of mail, so we won one account. Did we lose every other account? Because they never sent me mail about the accounts we were losing. So I laid down a rule that you have to send bad news in equal measure with good news. You just can't send me only good news. You also have to tell me what things we may have to change. Because bad news is 100 times more actionable than good news. You don't cancel appointments or change priorities based on good news. And certainly in the world of technology, take every technology company that failed. Their sins, their big mistakes, were all made in the years of their greatest profitability. And so we have to magnify every little thing that happens and try and see, is that a trend? Is there something we can learn from it? Do we need to change direction to being more on top of things?
But Gates' big problem right now is not the competition, it is the government. John Gage of Sun Microsystems is one of Gates' biggest critics, and he supports the DOJ action.
Microsoft is the cash register. Microsoft can be the airline reservation terminal. Microsoft can be the place you buy and sell automobiles. Microsoft can threaten every insurance company. Microsoft's at this monopoly position far more pervasive than Standard Oil ever was, because the entire economy now depends upon these things working. That's the reason that the suit by the United States government is so important about business behavior, nothing to do with technology or innovation.
David Kirkpatrick of Fortune magazine says there is a growing body of evidence against Microsoft.
There is an increasing body of opinion, and government says evidence, that they have actually broken the law in the way they compete, and that they have used illegally heavy-handed tactics in forcing people to exit from businesses that inconvenience them, and using their dominance to pressure companies to withdraw products or to slow down development or change development. If that's proven, I believe it ought to be stopped.
While the immediate threat to Microsoft is the antitrust action, there is a growing sense that Microsoft and Gates really are at risk, not because of the government, but because of changes in computer technology. The whole desktop model, the strength of the Windows monopoly, is giving way to a new connected computing model in which operating systems may become irrelevant.
There's a real irony right now, and that is that at the same time that the government is really honing in and potentially poised to seriously inhibit Microsoft's competitive capabilities as they've defined them themselves. The market, at the same time, is changing in such a way that really could hurt Microsoft. The risks to Microsoft of the developing movement towards thin client computing and technology that will not be Windows-based, that will be disseminated far more ubiquitously in our lives. And people are talking about, you know, the world of 6 billion connected devices in a few years, and asking what percentage of those devices will be carrying a Microsoft operating system. And I think most people who ask that question presume that the answer is a fairly low percentage.
You know, our view is there's no way that Microsoft is going to be able to own 85% of that market. So this whole idea, which is really sits at the center of the Department of Justice suit with Microsoft, that they somehow have this monopolistic advantage over the rest of the market, we just don't think will play out in the future.
I think Microsoft is in a fragile position, and I think Bill Gates realizes this. On the one hand, he must invest a lot, much more than he is, in becoming a competent, professional computer company that makes products that don't break. And he's doing that, to his credit. And he realizes that in this new arena, where the PC is a tiny part of the overall computing environment, to move into the small devices, into the consumer devices, into the appliances, the refrigerators, the air conditioners, he has nothing that works there.
The growth of information appliances and mobile computing devices is opening up new opportunities for other software companies.
Microsoft clearly is trying to get Windows into all those appliances, but I think it's much harder to make the case for saying that there's a benefit to having your car run the same operating system as your database in the enterprise. So I think it's a harder argument to make. The other problem is, and challenge is for Microsoft, is that if you think about it, the requirements for software in embedded environments are that the software has to be incredibly small and incredibly reliable. And I would challenge anybody to think of a single Microsoft product in their history that you could ever have described as small and completely reliable.
Indeed, many of Gates' competitors would prefer that the market, rather than the government, deal with the power of Microsoft. Fortune magazine's David Kirkpatrick sees several negatives to the antitrust action.
One is that Microsoft does continue to be the engine of the technology industry in many respects, and the degree to which it gets slowed down really could slow down the entire industry. And number two, I think simply having the government meddling around in the technology industry could be a very bad precedent. Frankly, you know, many people say that companies like Netscape have also done similarly heavy-handed things. Oracle, IBM, SAP. There are a number of very powerful companies in this industry that have been accused, rightly or wrongly, of using their dominance in unfair ways.
It's anybody's guess as to what the outcome of all of this will be, but David Kirkpatrick thinks whatever the outcome, Microsoft and Bill Gates will never be quite the same after this.
Bill is spending a lot of time thinking about what the Justice Department is doing, and he's spending an awful lot of time being deposed and strategizing inside his company, and I think he's finding it an enormous distraction, and he's annoyed by it tremendously. My suspicion is that it's going to really make a big difference for Microsoft, and he doesn't really want to think about how big of a difference it may make.
Bill Gates does realize he's in a risky business, but he says he likes it that way.
If you want to be safe, this is the wrong business to be in. I think the reason most of us are in this business is because things do change, and it's very interesting, and no one, not Microsoft, not Intel, not anyone, has a guaranteed position. And unless you adopt your products, keep hiring the great people, you're not going to be there. You know, it's not like Coca-Cola where you can say, okay, will people be drinking it 20 years from now? Maybe so. That is a good business to be in. I mean, they deserve a high multiple compared to all of us here, because we're in a business where when you can surf, it's a beautiful thing, but you can fall off the wave very quickly.
As you might have guessed from what we just saw, there is a real battle underway between Microsoft and Sun Microsystems, between Windows NT and Java. At stake in the battle between Microsoft and Sun is the immense market for enterprise software. This is a market which has very high-level requirements for processing power and database capacity. Bill Gates has gone to great lengths to assure the enterprise computing world that Microsoft can deliver both.
The biggest database server on the internet today is one that we put up to show that we could do 1,000,000 times 1,000,000 characters of storage. In the world, there are less than 20 databases of that size. In fact, we couldn't even think, where are we going to get a database of that size? And it's dramatically more than all the text on the internet. It's dramatically more than every stock transaction that's ever taken place on every stock exchange in the history of the globe. It's actually about 20 times that much. Moving up on symmetric multiprocessing to use more processors per system. We'll go from the 4, 8, or 16 you see today and using non-uniform memory addressing architecture, NUMA, approaches go up to at least 128 processors per system. And then, of course, we'll cluster those systems together, which is not only a scalability technique, but a reliability technique to create very, very large systems that will be able to deal with literally tens of billions of transactions. And today, there's no company that needs more than about 200 million transactions a day. So we'll be able to be a couple of orders of magnitude ahead of current day requirements.
The vehicle for delivering this new power is Windows NT 5.0, now renamed Windows 2000, the much-awaited upgrade to the current version of Windows NT. But it has had its problems and its bugs and its delays.
If I can ship NT5 1 month sooner, I'll pay an extra 100 million. I mean, that's worth a lot to me.
That extraordinary comment by Bill Gates set off a flurry of discussion about why 1 month of the new Windows NT was worth $100 million to Gates.
The reason NT is such an important product for Microsoft, in my opinion, is that they really are threatened at the end client level, at the user device level, and that the world really could move away from their model. This is a company that was started with the vision of a computer on every desk and in every home running Microsoft software. And they've gotten pretty close to that. But if Palm Pilot is the device of the future, and little portable smart cell phones are the devices of the future that will not necessarily be running Windows, their future profits may come more from server products that are at the core of the network computing architecture as opposed to at the periphery of the computing architecture. And if that's true, then NT is the product that is their future.
There is a fundamental disagreement on what the model should be for large enterprise software. The view at Sun is that proprietary platforms like Windows and immense programs like Windows NT are outdated.
At the bottom, NT is just like Unix. Operating system, state-of-the-art, 1985. That's when threads were first introduced, little tiny ways of doing things that were very lightweight. That's at the core of NT. It's the core of Unix now. But this is now almost the year 2000. These are operating system ideas of 25 years ago. To change the world to a world of distributed computing has been announced by Microsoft. The Vice President of Research of Microsoft, Rick Rashin, announced the death of NT. Web pages at www.research.microsoft.com. Millennium Project. We'll build a world where the operating systems of today vanish, where you don't think about a file name on a particular machine. That's completely antiquated and archaic.
The Red Herring's Tony Perkins thinks that Bill Gates himself doesn't really believe in the future of Windows.
He was still presenting the Windows worldview. It looked basically like he was saying that their 5-year strategy at Microsoft continues to be based on the Windows platform. Frankly, I don't think he believes that. I think he's a smart man who looks out into the market and realizes that a 30 million line code piece of software is not going to be able to be put into a telephone even a downsized version of that, that these new emerging devices really require a new type of operating system, a new type of interface.
Some analysts believe both Windows and Java will survive in a form of peaceful coexistence in the future. But for now, there is little peace between Microsoft and Sun.
The pissing match between Sun and Microsoft is never ending. And they will both, till the death, complain that the other's products are mediocre, inadequate, unnecessary, pick your aspersive adjective. However, I think both companies make phenomenally good products when you get right down to it. And you know, they're going to be head-to-head for some time. Sun still currently has a much more powerful, robust product for servers. And Microsoft is aiming at their business. So Sun has every incentive to insult NT to the degree that they possibly can.
Sun's John Gage has his own plan for getting even with Bill Gates for all the time we spend dealing with the idiosyncrasies of Windows. It's a new whimsical website idea called Bill.
I thought it would be fun to put up a web page to which you could mail the amount of time you spent this last weekend trying to make the CD-ROM connect to your Windows machine. All of us lie to ourselves about how much time we spend on this. I'll just spend a few minutes. 2 hours later, it still doesn't work. Well, those 2 hours should be mailed. The thermometer will start going up. And when the thermometer reaches 1 million person hours, 10 million, 100 million person hours, which I think is an estimate that's fair. If you have your machine in a year, you probably take 100 hours of your time simply to fix a file corrupted by Windows 98. Or then you have to go to the bookstore and buy Secrets of Windows and Hidden Secrets of Windows, an $80 book just to fix your disk drive. Or then you call Microsoft and stay waiting on the help call line for 2 hours. Put those 2 hours into the thermometer. So my Billing Bill page is a way for the world at large to say the truth. You're wasting our time.
So what is the future for Microsoft and Bill Gates? Are they an unbeatable monopoly or a vulnerable, old-fashioned software company? Bill Gates thinks that Microsoft has just begun to tackle the problems of making great software.
Computers today, you will look back on these things as pretty bad. They don't see, they don't listen, they don't speak, they don't learn. They are cryptic. I mean, you could say everything we've done to date, which, you know, for a lot of people here is about 25 years of work, you could say it's a warm-up. It's certainly a warm-up in terms of the impact on society. It's certainly a warm-up in terms of the size of the business opportunity. And so it means that the next 25 years should be even more fun than the ones in the past.
Even Gates critic John Gage thinks Microsoft is making some very good moves for the future and fixing some of the problems of the past.
Microsoft today, in 1998, with wonderful programmers, some of the world's best who have only been there a few years, when Butler Lampson from DEC, Gordon Bell from DEC, were Alvy Ray Smith, when Jim Kojima, when the people that are the world's best programmers hired recently by Microsoft arrived, they found a group of amateur programmers who had never been fixing anything, paid very little money. They essentially gave a failing grade to all the people at Microsoft in the software divisions.
There is some concern that Microsoft, with its very wealthy stock-optioned employees, could be getting a little fat and lazy, and that some of its better programmers might just want to call it quits. But Gates says he isn't concerned.
I knew that a lot of people would retire when they got very wealthy. I'm actually surprised more haven't retired. And from time to time, there comes a person where we have to say, hey, you should retire. You know, excellence is what it's all about. It's not some game of you know, let's have the same old club meeting we had 10 years ago. But people have wanted to work, and they've risen to the challenge better than I would have expected. And that's, you know, just the run of luck we've had, and it makes it a lot of fun.
In fact, Gates says the financial success of Microsoft's employees means fun has to be one of the key motivators for the people who work there.
They come to work every day because they like their job. And it's fun to think that's the threshold test a company has to meet. It's not, haha, they'll be in here today, they need the paycheck, ha 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 ha. I mean, is that really how the rest of business works? Well, we don't have that advantage, if so. You know, our people are there because it's very exciting. The frontiers are still out there in front of us.
Perhaps what should bother Bill Gates is a growing animosity toward him and Microsoft, an attitude that was prevalent at a recent panel discussion led by Fortune magazine's David Kirkpatrick.
I was really struck at the Microsoft panel yesterday at the animosity toward Microsoft among the attendees at this conference. It was really surprising to me that really in a room with 75 or 90 people, most of them software and hardware industry executives, primarily software, the only two people in the room that were consistently defending Microsoft were myself and Tony Perkins, the publisher of The Red Herring, another journalist, and that virtually every industry player in the room was really cheering on the Justice Department and somehow thought that there's something wrong just that Microsoft has the dominance that it has, and almost implicitly believing that it's illegal for them to be as big as they are.
Tony Perkins may be David Kirkpatrick's ally in articulating the value of Microsoft to the computer industry, but even Perkins says the decade of Microsoft dominance may be ending.
In this era where we see an explosion in new computer devices and platforms, none of which I think will be dominated, none of the new categories will be dominated by Microsoft. A great example of that is the new Palm Pilot. Very, very fashionable product amongst professionals, and it's very interesting because it is neither a Microsoft nor an Intel technology-based product. So what does that mean? I think it's probably more significant psychologically than it is even commercially, because what's happening is the world or 3Com, who produces a Palm Pilot, is creating millions of users for the Palm Pilot who are now saying, hey, it's possible for me to operate a non-Wintel-based computer device.
John Gage thinks the Millennium Clock is ticking on Gates and that the next few years are critical to his future.
He has 5 years of continuing with his giant tanker in the same direction with market dominance. 5 years. So by the year 2003, is there a Microsoft that looks anything like the Microsoft today? I predict that he will break off applications groups. He will begin to focus on the very low-end devices, but it means he has to abandon all Windows, all NT, all of that, and do something new. And they're working on that at Microsoft, believe me now, right now.
Well, we've looked at the complex world of Microsoft and the challenges Bill Gates faces in the next decade, but will Bill Gates be there to tackle those challenges? What does he see in his future? An even bigger Microsoft? More money?
At any point in Microsoft's history, I saw a path that if things went well and we did a great job, to double the size of the company. And if anybody had said to me, but can you make the company 4 times the size, I would say, no, I don't think so. When we were 100 million, I would have said, I don't think we can get to 400 million. Or 400 million, I don't think we can get to 1.6 billion. And you know, the higher you get, the further down there is to fall. It's pretty far at this point. And I have to say, I feel exactly the same way I've always felt. If things went extremely well, I can see how we'd get to double the size we are today. But I don't see any way, from where I'm sitting right now, since I'd actually have to do it, to get to 4 times our current size. And that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, you know, making a few billion here, a few billion there, it's okay.
Alex View says we are seeing a new Bill Gates, a calmer, more mature Gates.
Gates has reached a point of his life where success is not anymore an issue, where recognition is not anymore a theme, because he's as popular as a president of a big nation, even as popular today around the world, and as respected as the President of the United States. The economic power of his firm and the economic power of his personality, because he owned so much of Microsoft, supersedes everything else. And because of that, Gates has reached a point, the shores of calm and serenity. It's very interesting to see him now relaxed, because he knows that Bill Gates has eventually matured.
But John Gage doesn't quite agree. He says Gates still acts occasionally like an adolescent, and it is that part of Gates' personality that drove Sun to sue Microsoft over their use of Java.
So how do you change the behavior of a spoiled child? You either spank the child or you give the child candy. Well, so which direction were we going to take with Microsoft? We try both all the time. That's why we seem to be so strange in our dealing with Microsoft. Scott McNeely will attack Microsoft because that's the only way it seems to get their attention. And then with engineering, we worked very closely with Microsoft. They have wonderful engineers to work together to improve the technical capability of these systems. So we said, look, this time we're going to spank you.
But even John Gage agrees that we are seeing a more mature and statesman-like Bill Gates, and this new Bill Gates seems to be going back to his roots, his love for software.
I'm a specialist, and software is what I love, and so my life's work is at Microsoft, building great software. There is a question of when I should turn over the particular job title that I have today, CEO, to someone else. I can't imagine somebody who's 60 years old running Microsoft. I think it shouldn't be done. I can imagine a 60-year-old sitting around, helping out, maybe going back and writing a little code, being a nice guy. And I'm looking forward to it.
Gates is, has been, and always will be a fierce competitor in life as well as in business. Perhaps a final insight into the mind of this man who rules the software world can be gleaned from this anecdote as relayed by David Kirkpatrick.
Somebody here told me the story that they had once played ping pong with Bill Gates at his house and beat Bill 2 games in a row. And it was a party, a lot of his friends were there, and he came up afterwards to this guy with other people within earshot and said, "You humiliated me in front of my friends." And this guy's response was, "Well, get better," But the fact is, this is a guy that can't stand to lose at anything he does.
Bill Gates is a complex man, a man with great power and a man with great responsibilities. He has certainly left his mark on the world. It remains to be seen whether it is a passing mark or a failing one. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Computer Chronicles. Hope we'll see you here again next time.
The Computer Chronicles is brought to you by BigStar.com, with thousands of videos and DVDs for the whole family.
To purchase a videotape copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-310-7850. Please specify the show number and the topic.
Next week on the Computer Chronicles, the best of Comdex. You'll see the new WebPad, a wireless appliance for surfing the web. Forget learning a foreign language. This new software can speak for you. This is the C Pen. It'll take notes for you and dump them into your PC. And consumer convergence has arrived with Avid Cinema for Windows. Coming up next week on the Computer Chronicles.